Hi there. This is John for killerphp.com, and today I'm going to be looking at how we can start fleshing out a simple form for populating our user object. So in the last video we looked at how we could write an anonymous function, which you're seeing right here. This function does not have a name, and passing that to a model, and then from a model rendering something with that function, which you're seeing here. This is a callback, and it's being called back here. And then passing the result back up to the controller, and then putting it in this user, and then rendering that user variable in a view, which you're seeing right here. So we're just looking a little bit at the architecture. Just one more quick thing that you can see is that functions don't always have to be anonymous. If I wanted to, I could put this function in as a render or definition list function, and I can make that equal to this. So if you're coming from a JavaScript background or any kind of functional programming, this won't appear too scary, but basically what we've got is we're defining a variable which is equal to a function, and then we're going to pass that definition list function into the render with function. So we're passing one function into another function, and we can't seem to do that. One thing to remember is that you always need to end with a semicolon, even if you're defining a function. So this function here does not require a semicolon, but because we're defining a function as a variable, we need to be very careful, and we need to close that with a semicolon. So this definition list function basically takes whatever it wants and it turns it into a definition list. And what's neat about this is that the definition list function doesn't know anything about its data. So we could actually create a separate function here called get definition list func, and it will take in results. Actually, it doesn't even need to. We'll just put that there, and then we will return this as a variable. So we'll say return function with results, whatever results is, and then here I can do this, get definition list func. Oh, we have to make sure that we run this as a function. So here we're actually creating or defining a function that is going to return a function. And then that returned function is going to be passed into another function called render with. And render with is going to take that function and it's going to run a whole bunch of parameters through that function. And we call that a callback. So you could imagine that you could do all kinds of processing here, and then you could return back some data to the view using the return, and actually we don't even need that output. We'll just say return out callback with those parameters. So it's a nice way of separating out everything into its own tier, or into its own layer, which is kind of cool. Okay, so with all of that done, in this video we're going to start fleshing out the form, and we're probably going to finish it in the subsequent videos, depending on how much we get done. So here what I'm going to do is look at our view again. So here we have our welcome view, but let's say we wanted to create a form in a different part of our application. So I'm going to go back to /index, and it's going to say uncaught exception, please implement a function called action, right? Now this is kind of going back to our whole view, model view controller architecture, and we can create some healthy defaults. So if I'm going to just killer PHP now, you're going to notice this is also going to probably throw out an error, or it's going to just say nothing. Okay, so if we put nothing in, we're fine, but if we put in /index, we're in trouble. So we also need to create another case here. Hold on. If action name is, if this is not set, then actually there's another way of doing this. Before I get carried away, when I find a bug, I want to tackle it. So let's say we do /index. That's okay, but if I do /index with a slash, then action name is not is empty. So we'll just go back here, and we're going to run a die statement on this action, and we're not getting anything. In fact, how much are we not getting? Is it just null? Yes, it's nothing. Okay, so if this action is equal to nothing, then this action will equal default. And that way we will have a default action, which is right up here. And we're going to have a default.php. So that shouldn't be a problem. So if I go back here, then this is going to work. Good. So I'm the default action of the index controller. If I go back here and I refresh this again, now I'm getting just a 1/ here. So we want to fix that as well. Okay, so now that's working. But if I go back here, this is not going to work. It's going to say that it can't find, there's no controller there. So we'll just have to fix that. And if we're not getting anything, then we need to specify that our controller name is in fact index. Now normally we wouldn't do this, but because we've got this added case up here, we'll have to be a little more specific. Okay, good. So we have our default action in our index controller, and I'm going to put a form in here. So if I go back to my project, I've got this default.php file, and this is where we're seeing I'm the default action of the index controller. So what I want to do here is I want to actually flush out a simple form. So I'm going to create a form with a method equals post, and it's going to have a label for first name, and then an input of type text. Name is going to be first name. ID is going to be first name. You'll notice that I'm using the same nomenclature as you'll find in the user model. So just like this is first name and this is first name, I'm also trying to respect that in my form elements. And this will make passing data back and forth really, really easy. So I'm just going to copy that, paste it, and I'll say this last name, and we'll call this address. And there we go. Lastly, we need an input type of submit. And there we go. So if I go back and I refresh this, I'm going to get the first name, last name, and address form fields. And this doesn't look very pretty, so we'll just create a style tag in the head. And we'll just say that label should display block. And what this will do is it'll put the first name on one line and then the text box on another line. So far, so good. So the next step is actually passing this data, whatever we submit, to the controller, having the controller do something with it, and then, which will probably involve the model, and then posting back some kind of result set. So now that we've created the form, we're going to move on, at least in the next video, to saving that data. So if I just put in, first, last, and where I live, let's say I live at the Eiffel Tower, I hit submit, nothing is going to happen. But actually, if I wanted to, and we were doing all this funny stuff with rendering in the welcome action. So now we're looking at the default action. So I can actually run a var dump here with the request parameters. So if I refresh this again, you'll see that I'm actually sending all the data back and forth with the first name and the last name and the address. So in the next video, we're going to look at how we can take this and dynamically assign these properties to our model very quickly. And then once we've assigned them, we're going to look at how we can save them using session. And we're using session instead of a database because it's a little quicker, and it'll mean that, down the line, if you choose to use XML, or if you want to do it with a MySQL database, or if you want to use Oracle or what have you, that'll be kind of your own business. But the controller and the view shouldn't change. This is a model question, not a controller and view question, since the controller is interested in dispatching requests, and the model is interested in persistence. It's interested in saving data. So that's what we're going to do in the next video. Thanks for listening.